Hello, today we will be going over 1.1 Points, Lines, and Planes of the Geometry Big Ideas Math Common Core High School textbook. Our EQ for this chapter is how can you use dynamic geometric software to visualize geometric concepts? So moving on to core concepts. A point has no dimension and a dot represents a point. So we can see here point A is represented as this dot right here. Now we can put points on lines as well as inside of planes. A line has one dimension and it is represented by a line with two arrowheads. So as we can see here, there's an arrowhead on either side, meaning that it goes on forever. And this line is called AB or line BA. Doesn't matter which way you say it. Through any 2 points, there is exactly one line. So through points A and B, there is only one line, and that line is line L. Now a plane has two dimensions, and it is represented by a shape that looks like a floor or a wall. So something along the lines of this. And through any 3 points that is not on the same line, there is exactly one plane. So through points B, A, and C, there is one plane, and that plane is plane M. A few definitions. Collinear points are points that lie on the same line, and coplanar points are points that lie in the same plane. So we can tell what this means by looking at the word. Co means together, and we can see that one of the root words is line. So together on one line and together on one plane. Let's move on to some exercises. So which one doesn't belong? We have AB, FG, and HI. And we have line segment AB, line FG, and ray HI. And the difference between these three and a plane is that these three all include only 2 points, whereas a plane includes 3 points. So we can see that plane CDE is the term that does not belong with the other 3. Let's move on to exercises next. So in this picture, we can see that there are 2 planes, plane S right here, and plane T right here. And we can see it says name 4 points. So 4 points, we can see that there's actually 5 points. Point B, point C, point E, point D, and point A. And those are all points in this diagram. Next, name 2 lines. So we have line DE and line BC. It does not matter which way you say it, so it can be either line DE or line ED, and the same thing for the other one. Name the plane that contains points A, B, and C. So we have point A, point B, and point C. They are all in the same plane, plane S, and we can see that the plane is usually labeled at the corners of the planes. We can also see that point A is also in another plane, point T. Name the plane that contains points A, D, and E. So points A, points D, and points E. These are all in the same plane of plane T. Give 2 other names for WQ. So we can see line WQ right here. Another way that we already learned is to just switch the letters. So another way would be line QW. Another way, a second way, is to look right here. And usually lines are labeled, so this line is considered line G. Give another name for plane V. So if we remember back to our definitions, a plane can be defined as any 3 points that are not collinear or not on the same line. So this is plane V right here. And another name for plane V, we can just use any 3 points that are not on the same line. So this can be R, S, T, or even RQT. And we can say that the plane is plane RQT. It would be the same as saying plane V. Name 3 points that are collinear or on the same line. Then name a 4th point that is not collinear with these 3 points. So first, naming 3 points that are collinear, R, Q, S are all on the same line. And another 4th point that is not collinear with these 3 points would be T. Name a point that is not coplanar with R, S, and T. So we have R, S, and T, and a point that is not coplanar, meaning not on the same plane, would be point W. That is the only point in this diagram that is not with the others. Next, what is another name for BD? So we can say DB and just switch the letters. What is another name for AC? Same thing, we can say CA. What is another name for ray AE? So something to consider with rays, make sure the ray that you put at the top of your two letters is always pointing to the right, and that's the only way you can write a ray. So what is another name for ray AE? Another name would be AC. Name all rays with endpoint E. So looking at this picture, we can see that there are actually 4 rays with endpoint E, and those are ray EB, ray EC, ray ED, and ray EA. Name 2 pairs of opposite rays. So opposite rays are basically just rays that are pointing in the different directions or opposite directions from each other. So for example, we have ray EB and ray ED, and these are pointing in directly opposite directions, forming a line, and that would be considered opposite rays. Another pair of opposite rays would be ray EC and ray EA. Name 1 pair of rays that are not opposite rays. So, for example, this could be 2 things in this diagram. We have ray EC and ray ED. Those would not be considered opposite rays. Likewise, ray EB and ray EA would not be considered opposite rays because they do not form a line and they're not directly opposite from each other. Okay, so now we are on our last set of questions. Name a point that is collinear with points E and H. So collinear is on the same line, and the only other point that is on the same line as E and H is J. Name a point that is collinear with points B and I. So B and I, the only other point on the same line right here is point C. Name a point that is not collinear with points E and H. So we have points E and H. We already know that point J is on this line, and actually that's the only point on this line. So all other points would be considered not collinear. Name a point that is not collinear with points B and I. The only other point that is collinear with B and I is C, and all the rest of the points are not collinear because they do not fall on the same line. Name a point that is coplanar or on the same plane with points D, A, and B. So we have points D, A, and B, and another point that is on this same plane is points I and point C. Name a point that is coplanar with points C, G, and F. So points C, G, and F, that would be this plane right here on the back. And another point that is coplanar with them or on the same plane is point I or even point B. Name the intersection of plane AEH and plane FBE. So we have this plane right here, as well as this plane right here. And the intersection would be a line right here. And this line is AE or line EA. It's the same line. Finally, name the intersection of plane BGF. So BGF is right here. And plane HDG, so right here. So between this plane right here and this plane right here, we already know from the last problem that the intersection is a line, and we can see that this intersection is line CG, otherwise known as GC. Something else to note is that there are 6 planes in this figure because since this is a cube, there are 6 sides and each plane forms one side. Please like and subscribe if this video was helpful and you want more content on the following geometry chapters. Thank you.